in businesses of all kinds these days, it really does come down to if you can hire the right person, you can do anything. If you can't hire the right person, it doesn't matter what your idea is. You're not going to get there.
And I think hiring is it's really on the forefront right now. So I think that this notion of the culture of hiring is a strategic advantage. It sounds like the question is, how do we actually make good on that?
We did a bunch of research on this topic. And so we surveyed thousands of companies all over the world, and we looked at what they were doing. And it turns out that the difference between the companies where hiring is working really well and everyone else is not about the recruiter. It's about the...
When you think about AI, what is the most promising aspects of how it can help us get this right, create this culture of hiring?
I like to call it, it's not artificial intelligence, it's augmented intelligence. These tools are there to help you think. And if you think that they're there to make the decisions for you, that's where we get into trouble. The truth is, there is a huge need for efficiency. And a lot of companies are overwhelmed with applicants. As it gets easier and easier to apply for jobs, there's more and more applications. I had someone reach out to me this morning that wrote me like a very personalized note. It was like, hey, I've been a customer of Greenhouse in the past. I love using the tools as a hiring manager. I am now in the recruiting industry as a recruiter, and I was looking at a job at your company. I'm going to read that email. I'm going to respond to that person. I sent that off immediately to my recruiting team. I was like, here's someone who invested their own time and energy already. There's something different about that than the hundreds of people that are in the top of my inbox.
My very special guest is the CEO and co-founder of Greenhouse. He's been a technology entrepreneur in New York for over 22 years. He graduated from the University of Michigan, go Blue, with a degree in computer engineering. He is Daniel Chait. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm excited to have this conversation. I know we had a brief interview before, and you really taught me some amazing things about everything in the world of talent acquisition, talent management. And you've had such a great run with Greenhouse. I just can't wait to dig into it today.
Well, thank you. That's very kind. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, one of the things that you've emphasized is this importance of running people-centric business. And I thought we could start with that term. What does people-centric mean to you? And why is it so important now, well, probably more than ever in this modern world of work of ours?
Yeah, I mean, most businesses have all kinds of capital, right? There's physical capital, there's financial capital, there's reputation capital, and so on. The only kind that can create all the other kinds is human capital. And so why do I say that is, ultimately, the engine of value creation and growth for any business comes down to the people. Even if those people are technology enabled and more with AI and really powerful technologies, people can get more done than ever before. It still comes down to those individuals. And do they work well together? Do they understand what the goals are and what the tasks they need to do to get there? Do they create a culture where others can join and do their best work and bring their talents to the table? And those human factors are ultimately, in my experience, the differences between a good company and a great company.
And you always talk about, you've made it so eloquent the way you put it. I always like to say, like, every business is a people business. So I say, which is a little simplified. But when we think about, no matter what the market throws at you, no matter what your competition does, it's going to be up to your people to respond.
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking to a customer last week. They are a glass manufacturing company. So you think, okay, like it's probably about the glass. I was like, what are your problems? What are you thinking about? And what he was telling me was that their goals as a business all revolve around, can they upskill their talent for changes in their market? Can they bring internal mobility so that people can get their way into like roles that are going to grow the business more effectively? Can they energize the talent that's running their plants, manufacturing plants for new markets and new technologies? And like it all came down to their ability to find and attract and hire the best people. And so those of us that spend our time in technology, like you imagine, oh yeah, sure, it's a very creative, it's very human. But in businesses of all kinds these days, it really does come down to if you can hire the right person, you can do anything. If you can't hire the right person, it doesn't matter what your idea is. You're not going to get there.
It seems like when we think about what we train in business schools, we focus a lot on technology and operations and strategy as if we didn't even have people. And I think there's an understanding that the mechanics of business is very important. We have to understand that. Otherwise, I don't care how good your people are, it's not going to work out. But I think that I always had this notion that CEOs may not have as much fluency when it comes to people, but you really set me straight on that a bit, that they actually do, but there's still something that gets in the way a lot of times, which is how do you actually make good on that? How do you actually execute on that? So can you tell us a little bit about your view on that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, as a CEO, it's something that my colleagues or my counterparts at other businesses, when we get behind closed doors and, talk about what's on our minds, almost always it's people issues. My team, my culture, my ability to hire. I want to launch a new product or open a new office. Can I get the right person? Those kinds of issues. And yet, I think what most people imagine, what's going on in the head of a CEO, I like to think it's like a New Yorker cartoon where there's like a dude in a suit at the top of a boardroom and he's pointing at a chart of numbers. Like that's what they imagine. I think, in my mind. But I think in reality, people would be surprised to learn how much of what keeps a CEO up at night, keeps a founder up at night, are issues of people and talent. And so they know it's important. Um, and I think, when I talk to leaders of all types, I never have to spend 2 seconds telling them it's important to get the right people. They're way ahead. They're already there. Where the need is or the opportunity is, as you say, how do I get from that desire to the outcome I want? How do I give my business the ability to hire the right person in every role when I need them on time, efficiently, and so forth? The how is really hard as a company-wide, I like to call it a culture of hiring. And if you've been a part of a culture of hiring, you know what it's like. If you've never been a part of it, it's hard to imagine. And so what I see in those leaders is they have this desire, but they don't have a plan to get there, and they feel very frustrated by it.
And I think hiring it's really on the forefront right now because in certain industries, you mentioned manufacturing, we're experiencing a really rigorous talent shortage, not just in manufacturing, but that's one in particular. But also when you look at the new skills that are needed, it's really hard to find top talent if what you're looking for is something that didn't exist in the marketplace even a couple of years ago. So I think that this notion of a culture of hiring is a strategic advantage. It sounds like, in the sense that we recognize, and it sounds like all CEOs recognize that the people matter. The question is, how do we actually make good on that?
Yeah, we did a bunch of research on this topic several years ago because as a company whose mission is to help every company be great at hiring, we need to ask the question, well, what does it actually look like and how do companies do it? And so we surveyed thousands of companies all over the world and we looked at what they were doing. And it turns out that the difference between the companies where hiring is working really well and everyone else is not about the recruiter. And it's not, as much as I would like to say, it's not about the software, although those things can help. It's about the leadership behaviors. And we identified this need, this missing language around there are leaders who lead that culture of hiring, who know that formula and make sure their organization does it, and there's everyone else. And there's no name for that. So we gave it a name. We called it Talent Makers as the name of the book. And we started telling this story to people about if you're a leader who wants to get this outcome, you want your organization to be able to compete for talent and have great people come there and stay there, you need to be a talent maker. And what does that mean? What do talent makers do? And how does it work? And we broke that all down into a framework that we put into this book. And so when you meet someone who's a talent maker, they'll just tell you, oh yeah, I spent half my time interviewing. Absolutely. Or like, of course I'm going to call a candidate at the final stage as they're considering an offer and, offer to get on the phone with them. I'm like, that may be obvious to you. Most leaders don't do those things. And I can tell you as a leader who does those things, when I'm talking to a candidate, in my mind, I'm thinking like, whatever other job they're considering, I want to bring my A game on this one. And, if their recruiting coordinator is talking to this candidate and our CEO is talking to this candidate, I feel like it gives us an advantage. So I'll tell you a story. I hired someone literally this week. And as that person was considering our offer, I gathered the interview team, the people who had met with this candidate along the way. And I said, hey, we're getting the final stage of this person. There's an offer going out. If you met them and you had a connection during the interview process, it might be nice if you said a word. And they all sent like 2-3 line email to the person saying, hey, like I met you. I'm excited. That sounds like we're moving forward. Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can do? And it just makes the person feel and really understand how valued they are. And it makes a big difference in your ability to attract talent.
What I love about that is that, of course, in your business especially, you would expect that you got to get it right. But what you shared is one of those techniques that I call fast and free. How long does it take to send a 2-sentence email because you spoke to somebody a week ago? And the other thing I always say is top talent always has a choice. So how do you start to stack the deck for your organization? how about show them that you're really great at hiring? Like you said, that because if that's where it begins, you can presume that it's only going to get better as I go through onboarding, through matriculation,
You
through
got it.
promotion, all those things.
And
That's the front door.
you got it. And that story that I just told you, that wouldn't work if you didn't exhibit it all along the way. So the moment that they applied to a job or looked at a job on your website, through the interviews, like, are the interviews on point? Do they make sense? Or am I being asked the same question over and over again? Is the company getting back to me on time, or are they dragging their feet and hemming and hawing? Are they giving me a clear sense of what the next steps are and how long they're take? Or are they, I don't know, we got a huddle, we'll get back to you. And the difference is between running that well orchestrated process, which takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of orchestration on the organization, and the kind of chaos that happens in most companies. Again, it gives you, people think about hiring as like, oh, you got to select, you got to like interview them and filter them out, but it's a two-way street. And you definitely have to do selection and assessment, but you also have to demonstrate, to those people through a well-orchestrated process, a great candidate experience, that, you value their time.
As I get older and I keep studying organizational dynamics, I really focus on energy. And I think you create a tremendous amount of energy in the selection process, because now all of a sudden we're going through and we're meeting people that are at the company, and we're learning about what it's going to be like to be here. We're kind of taking it for a test drive in our mind, so to speak. And as soon as you have an interview team member who you can just know that they went to scan the CV 6 seconds before they walk into the interview and they ask a question you've already answered 100 times, what happens to that energy? It's like, oh, okay, it's one of those. Or they wait, and don't hear back, and now I'm chasing, versus just give me a no, it's fine. I'd have more respect for that. It just seems like we can dissipate that energy that we really want from our top talent. We're going to be paying for this energy.
You got it.
Let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that firsthand. I don't know, most people probably haven't listened to a lot of job interviews, even their own necessarily, but I've listened to hundreds of interviews, dating back over 20 years. And when I first got into this was at my prior company over 20 years ago. I was curious about the interview process that we were running. It didn't seem like it was working. It was not predictable. I didn't understand why certain candidates were making it through and others weren't, or the judgments my teams were making. I said, look, I gotta figure this thing out. And so I dated me a little bit, but I went to Radio Shack, which was in the lobby of our building, and I got a tape recorder and I gave it to my coordinator. And I said, anytime somebody comes in for an interview, hand the tape recorder to the interviewer, push record, sit it on the table, and when they walk out, take it back. And I listen to the tapes on the way home. So I literally listened to hundreds of interviews. And exactly to your point, I would hear a day come where a candidate would come in and the first interviewer would say, so tell me about an important project that you worked on. And the person would be excited and they would be interested and they would say, oh, this great project. And here's the challenge I overcame. And here's what I delivered. And the interview went great. And the candidate would leave, the interviewer would come out and say, that candidate's amazing. And then the next interviewer would go in and they'd be like, oh, so tell me about an important project you worked on. And they would kind of gin up the energy. Okay, they would tell the story again, right? It's like they did a B+ job. And that person would come out and be like, yeah, the candidate's pretty good.
Oh, no.
At the end of the day, and we did this. I mean, I feel my company did this, perpetrated this to a poor candidate. The interviewer came out like, that candidate is terrible. I asked them a question about an important project. You could tell they don't have any passion. They barely gave me any details. They didn't really answer any of my questions I followed up on. Like, we shouldn't hire them. And we're like, what a disaster that we made happen because we weren't organized. And every person on the interview team was trying their best. They were asking what they thought was a good question, but because it wasn't coordinated, there was no plan, there was no repeatable process or set of like, here's the rubric we're going through, here's why you're in this interview, here's why you're in that interview, here's what you're here to do. We had none of that. And so we screwed it up. And that happens at every day in companies all over the world today. And that's a big part of what we're trying to do with Greenhouse with the structured hiring is bring that orchestration and help support that culture of hiring. So you don't make those, I like to call them TNT, takes no talent. Yeah. These are easy to do.
You're right.
You just have to design it and put a little bit of thought in to make it happen.
The reaction after you hear a story like that is you want to say, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
It's just frustrating. Because look, I mean, it's, and at the same time, I was thrilled because I had a lot of hard problems to solve in my life. This seemed like such an easy problem to solve. It's like, what if we just huddle ahead of time and agree to ask different questions? Like, that's the easiest problem I had to solve all day, and it works. And then the candidates leave and you get to learn different things about them throughout the day because everyone asks different questions. and you get different aspects of them. The candidate has an engaging experience, so you get their best, you get to probe from all areas, and you come away with like a really rich 3D map of like what they are good at, what they're not good at, where you see a lot of consensus, where you still don't know. And so it's just a better assessment approach, but also because of that becomes a better experience for the candidate.
And say you had a high profile candidate, high potential, had that great energy in the beginning. The other thing that happens for the interview team, I've seen the dynamic be like, well, wait a second, like who's going to want to say yes on this? And the people at the end are like, I was kind of lukewarm on them. And even if you were strong on the candidate, you're like, geez, am I going to be the one who said I'm a strong yes on this candidate? But what if they don't work out? That it just only bad things tend to happen when you don't have that prep.
So there were a number of books that informed our approach at Greenhouse that we thought, well, we have to figure this all out ourselves. Like people smarter than us have thought about this a lot harder. But one of them was a book called Wiser by Cass Sunstein, and in this book he talks about the problems of group decision making. It turns out that we all make a million decisions every day, and most of us don't make decisions perfectly. In sort of predictable ways. But when we get together as groups, it turns out that groups generally make worse decisions in, again, very predictable ways. And so this book kind of takes you through systematically, what are the ways that groups make bad decisions? And then what are things we can do to overcome those and make better decisions as a group? And you talked about one of them, which is this idea of trying to anchor on what everyone else thinks, right? So typically if you go around the table and we all say what we think, there's a priority bias. The person who goes first, everybody goes, well, I don't want to disagree with that person. There's a status bias. If the boss says something, nobody wants to disagree with the boss. And there's a bunch of other ways groups make bad decisions. But the good news about the book and the good news about the right way to hire is you can overcome those very easily. So what you should do is everybody independently come to their conclusion. I thought they were good, or I thought they were great, or I thought they were bad, and then contribute that to the group. And only then do we look at the whole data set. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sitting there like, oh, I don't want to go against what this person thought, or I don't want to be the squeaky wheel.
Right.
Because that's politics. That's not sound decision making.
Well, and everyone loses. I mean, the team's losing because they might miss out on a high potential candidate. Candidate loses. They're like, oh my gosh, I could have had this dream job. And it's, I'm also as discouraged as I am that we still have this challenge 20 years later in your experience. I'm encouraged by the fact that these are fixable things. You're bringing this mindset of saying, we've solved for these things to a reasonable extent and we can do better. We just have to want to do better.
When we started Greenhouse, we would tell the story, and like every once in a while, someone would be like, "Oh yeah, totally, that's how we do it." But most people this was totally new to them, and it was a big idea of doing scorecards and giving an interview a preparation ahead of time. It's a lot less so these days. So I think there has been a lot of progress. I mean, our customers last year collected about 13 million scorecards. So that's 13 million hours that people spent in an interview with someone that was like well planned, that was useful, that was fair. Like that's meaningful. Now, is there a lot more out there? I mean, we say our mission is to help every company be great at hiring. There's millions of businesses and we don't have millions of customers. So there's a lot more to do. But I do think that some of these ideas have started to make their way and be a little more mainstream and be a little more prevalent. And so, look, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, like, you have to pick a big, ambitious mission if you're gonna really sink your teeth into something and have any. But that just means it's a long road. And so, I'm happy with the progress we've made as much as I'm ambitious that there's a lot more to do.
Well, I think that this is the year that we've really seen this. I don't know if it's even this year, last year, the AI has really come onto the scene. And so of the things that we've been talking about, when you think about AI, you see all of this and you've considered and evaluated in your own products, for example. When you think about AI, what is the most promising aspects of how it can help us get this right, create this culture of hiring, even at the operational level, the tactical level, the single job interview level? And what is it that's kind of, I don't want to say it's hype, or maybe it could actually potentially even hurt the process if we don't use it properly?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, there's a million different, ways to go with that. I guess I would say, a lot of what, has come out over the last, couple of years, there's the, conversational interfaces. Great. Super powerful way to interact with software. Clicking around on menus or, in my day, typing in commands into like a prompt, right? They're hard. They require like arcane knowledge and, you can get the syntax wrong and it doesn't know what you mean. Or you can't find that menu item in Microsoft Word that is there. Like we've all had that experience. But when you can just chat with it and you say, look, I want to make this text look bigger, and it can do it, that's amazing. And so I think there are huge applications of stuff like that, or a large language model can write, text in ways that you can give it, to describe. That's incredibly powerful. At the same time, you have to think about um, what is the role of that AI or that algorithm in actual decision making, and that's I think where you have to be really thoughtful. I like to call it it's not artificial intelligence; it's augmented intelligence. These tools are there to help you think, and they'll help you be more productive, help you be more creative, help you make better decisions. And if you think that they're there to make the decisions for you, that's where we get into trouble. Which is a tough um, concept. It's an unfortunate concept because the truth is there is a huge need for efficiency, and a lot of companies are overwhelmed with applicants. As it gets easier and easier to apply for jobs, there's more and more applications in everyone's pipelines, and yet filtering through that and getting to the signal in the noise is really hard. And there's like a really obvious answer staring us in the face, which is like, why doesn't Greenhouse just make an AI algorithm that can like digest this whole inbox and just told me like who are the three candidates I should look for? And we just have to be really careful not to outsource our decision making, to the algorithm, but instead use it in ways that helps us make decisions faster, more efficiently, but not in a way that's going to be that's going to either damage our company by missing out on top talent or damage the applicants by being unfair, biased, etc.
I think when it's used most powerfully, it helps us to rehumanize aspects of the business that when we didn't have the capabilities, we almost had to transactionalize, if you will. So the thought of an AI that can help us to make sure that we're balancing the interview questions or these types of things, but not outsourcing our thinking, to your point, seems to be a much more fruitful future for us.
Yeah, I heard someone say that, it used to be that we wanted to build technology that could do all of our chores for us so that we could have time to make art and write. And instead, we've created technology that makes art and writes for us so that we can spend all our time doing chores. And it's a funny line, but there's a truth in there, which is, what is the job of a human being? Why are you part of the process? If there's this algorithm that can write copious amounts of text, it can process huge amounts of data, what is the job of the person there? And I think there's an essential humanity in making the decisions and giving a great experience. I mean, if you think about the stories that we've already told in this conversation, who thinks that I could have an algorithm, even if it could perfectly assess all the skills and all the talents of the job applicants I'm coming across, but give them the reason to want to work for me, give them the desire to be a part of our team and a part of our mission. Like that's a job for a person. And so, there's a lot of stuff that companies like ours can and will do. And I think it's unquestionable that certainly in 5 years' time, but I would even say based on our roadmap, at the end of this calendar year, our product's going to look in a lot of ways unrecognizable how software has looked in the past. Like that is undeniable, it's happening. I can give you a bunch of examples, but at the same time, like you have to think about what are the limits of that and how do the people fit into the puzzle.
And going all the way back to the top, when you talk about all the different types of capital, when it comes to that human capital, it's about connection, it's about relationships. And that's the stuff that we need to use the tools to free us up to do those things. And I think that the experience that I have as an interviewee and I'm going through and making those relationships, and then all of a sudden when I'm making the tough decision and I'm talking to my partner at home about, do I take this one or that one? And oh, look at this. I just got 5 emails or 5 outreach from people who I actually remember and enjoy the interview process. Like you can't replicate that.
That's right.
That's going to be the winning offer every time.
And we've all gotten like those, AI written spams in our inbox. Like you can tell, like, it's like, hey, Daniel, I noticed you work at Greenhouse Software. Like, do you want to take a demo of our product? And it's like, yeah, you didn't notice that. Your AI bot like scraped it off my LinkedIn profile.
But when you've connected me to the company's mission, you took my old experience to show how you're going to take my skills even to the next level here. I'm a part of something. It's like, wow, there's that energy again.
I mean, I get hundreds of those and most people do a day and I delete them all. I had someone reach out to me this morning that wrote me like a very personalized note. It was like, hey, I've been a customer of Greenhouse in the past. I love using the tools as a hiring manager. I am now in the recruiting industry as a recruiter, and I was looking at a job at your company, and I think the opportunity to like be a part of what you're doing is really exciting. Here's my resume. I would love to see if there's any openings. Like, I'm going to read that email. I'm going to respond to that person. I sent that off immediately to my recruiting team. It was like, here's someone who invested their own time and energy already in us. Like, there's something different about that than the hundreds of people that are in the top of my inbox. And so I think that regardless of all the rest, like as a job seeker, you can still stand out if you invest some time and energy in a job versus if you just try to win the AI arms race, so spamming every job.
Wow. Well, consider me a strong yes on this interview. I love it. I love it. I think that I want to shift gears for us. I've always do this segment with my guests where we have a trivia question here.
All right.
And I have no idea what the question is. You and I are a team. We're going to try to answer this question. And the audience, I know they just love playing along at home. And because it's totally unscripted, this is absolutely my favorite part.
We'll see.
So an interview with Inc. magazine told us that you're an avid canoeer.
I am.
And a Bloomberg article mentioned annual trips to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness.
Indeed.
Okay. So which of the following brands is widely recognized as one of the most popular canoe oar brands in the world? I've got 4 choices for us here.
Oh boy.
First of all, yeah, you're going to be completely on your own. I'm not a canoe.
I got to call a timeout.
Yeah.
You say canoe oar?
It's what it says.
No. It's a canoe paddle.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
A canoe paddle.
Yeah.
See, already. I'm telling you how much of an island you're on.
I'm the real deal here. Let's go.
Canoe paddle. So we have A, Bending Branches.
Absolutely. I love
B,
Bending Branches.
Tool.
No, Bending Branches.
C, Old Town. Or D, Swift Canoe and Kayak.
Bending Branches makes wonderful custom wood canoe paddles. They do bent shaft, straight shaft. It's a beautiful product.
Okay, so I'm going to use the collective we here. We are going with Bending Branches because you carried this completely. Audience, if you play along at home, you can check the answer. The answer is A, Bending Branches. Daniel, you destroyed that question. It was awesome.
I mean, you're going to ask me a question about the thing I love probably most in the world. Like I'm gonna go deep on that.
Well, my last question for you: where can my listeners go to learn more about you and about Greenhouse?
Yeah, we're all at our website is Greenhouse, www.greenhouse.io, and you can read all about it, what we're doing there.
I love it. Listeners, I'm going to have those links for you in the show notes. You can go right to Greenhouse and learn all about the great things that Daniel's taught us today. Daniel, thank you so much for being with us today. I really enjoyed it.
It was a pleasure.